The Toronto Blue Jays are making moves. They have made a couple of very interesting moves following what has been an injury-riddled start to their pitching staff. We'll break down exactly what those moves are and discuss what it means going forward, as well as break down multiple huge updates, including one update that is way better than we initially thought. We also have some interesting comments from some players following yesterday's huge win against the Red Sox. Stay tuned for all that in this episode. Before we get into it, folks, if you're part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Jays content. Your guys' support has been unbelievable, despite the Jays of course, struggling thus far, and especially over the past 11 or so games. The Jays finally came out yesterday and had a win that was, a game that was worth watching. Of course, a win that was pretty impressive. But we have some interesting news to discuss today. Let's start with the moves that happened prior to yesterday's game, and they flow into some of the updates today fairly seamlessly. So you can see this here. Left-handed pitcher Eric Lauer was selected to the Major League roster and was active, and Casey Lawrence was DFA'd. So obviously Eric Lauer was technically not the starter for yesterday's game because they used an opener with Yariel Rodriguez, but he was the one who got the bulk of the innings yesterday. And like I discussed in the post-game video yesterday, he did a pretty good job. He went 4 innings, gave up 2 runs, and the Jays have been desperately looking for depth pitching, whether that be in the minor leagues, whether that be on the waiver wire. They obviously literally picked up Casey Lawrence like 48 hours ago, had him pitch the day after, and then DFA'd him the day after that. So they're trying to find depth for their starting pitching staff simply because of the fact that obviously Max Scherzer is hurt and they don't have much depth. Jake Bloss is starting to pitch a lot better, which we'll have a video on coming up soon. But at the end of the day, you have Eric Lauer now, and he's going to be probably taking over that, 5th starter spot for the foreseeable future here over the next week or two, depending on, which we'll dive into in a minute, in updates surrounding Max Scherzer. But it is an interesting move. And then, of course, for Casey Lawrence, he is DFA'd, so he is off the team. But the move here, bringing up Eric Lauer, it's just depth. They're trying to find somebody who can, start some games. They had Paxton Schultz up. You had Eric Lauer, of course, Easton Lucas for a while. They're trying to find somebody, and Easton Lucas is a lefty, and so is Eric Lauer, who can just get outs. And that's what Eric Lauer did yesterday. He gave up the 2 runs, but he kept the Blue Jays in the game and ultimately led to a win. But this flows well into the major topic here, which is, of course, Max Scherzer, which we'll dive into in a second. But first, let's touch on Eric Lauer's comments with the Jays, because he was with the Jays for only 8 hours, but he felt the juice tonight. Those homers were just a whole new lifeline for us, and I feel like those kind of things, those quick bursts of excitement is what really gets the team going. And we'll dive back into this in a minute, but that's what's going to hopefully propel this team. I'm hoping this win yesterday against the Red Sox, a division rival, coming back from down 6-0 to win 7-6, is something that can propel this team going forward. You have Dalton Varsho now, who had a great game. He's off to a great start. Anthony Santander is out of the month of April, where he notoriously struggles. Same with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. It's a new month now, a slightly easier schedule. It still doesn't get much easier, but a slightly easier schedule nonetheless. And you just have guys that are ready to turn a corner here, and that's, you have to hope for that. The standings are still super close. You're still super early in the season, and the AL East isn't the powerhouse that it once was. And at least this season, you have a chance to make the wild card if you just continue to float for a little bit and then make a strong push here. And a few things to dive into, but I want to start with a couple different things. Now, I want to dive into the hitting as well, because you could look at this coming into this season, the WRC plus. I want to dive into that as well because it is extremely interesting. This was before yesterday's game. It probably bumped up 4 or 5 points, but I want to put a bow and a tie here on the pitching. So Max Scherzer, yesterday, we got a big update. His mound session Wednesday went fairly well per manager John Schneider. He's definitely making progress. The last 2 times off the mound, the feedback has been a lot better. So for the first time, we actually have a very positive update. And I covered it, I believe it was in yesterday's video, and he was throwing off of a bullpen. And I basically said how, with Max Scherzer, we're hearing more and more updates, but we haven't heard anything negative about his, outings with the bullpen and his throwing. And with this injury, when he does feel pain, we know about it pretty early. He'll take his injections, he'll take his shots, and he'll throw, and then he'll probably feel it the next day or the day after, and then we'll hear he's doing okay, but not, great. This time, for the past week or two, it's been pretty radio silent as it pertains to negative feedback on his injury. And then, of course, you have John Schneider coming out and saying that it's going fairly well and that it's gotten a lot better than it's a lot better than a lot of us thought, or at least they thought it was going to happen. And the feedback has gotten better, and you need this now. They're obviously treading water with guys like Eric Lauer. They're treading water with Easton Lucas, all these different guys. But it comes to a point where you need to just not tread water. You need to have a reliable starter, and that's what Max Scherzer was brought in to do. Obviously got injured in his first start, and I don't think he's going to come back, like you mentioned, until he's 100% healthy, whether that's 1 week, 2 weeks, the end of May into June. That's still yet to be seen, but obviously this is extremely, extremely encouraging news for the Toronto Blue Jays. And it's good. I mean, a lot of people thought, myself included, he may not pitch again in the major leagues. He might not pitch for the Jays this season, but he's sticking at it. He's back with the team. He's really pushing to get back because he knows the importance of his starting spot. And it's as simple as that. You have Eric Lauer. You can tread water for so long with bullpen games like yesterday, winning those games. But at some point, you're going to need to get some reinforcements, whether that comes in the form of Alek Manoah in August, Ricky Tiedemann at some point, who I think is probably more likely to be a bullpen arm and is more prone to be good out of the bullpen as a lefty, or whether that's a guy like Max Scherzer or trade acquisition at the deadline or even sooner. You need to get Max Scherzer back and then go from there. So seeing him make big progress is absolutely huge. Now, a couple other things I want to touch on before we wrap up here. Obviously, the win yesterday, John Schneider came out and said that it was bigger than the average April win. This is what we've been missing, and it feels great. And obviously, he's talking about missing home runs and actually winning ball games. I'm so impressed and proud of the way they came back. And it was good. It gave some life to this Blue Jays team. If you would have lost this one, you would have fell to 4 games below 500 to clue up April, which is a pretty, brutal month. And we know coming into the season, the goal was 500. Technically, they finished, 2 games below 500, which I don't think is that bad considering it was some of the worst baseball we have ever seen at any Blue Jays team ever. Like, they had no offense. It was unbelievably boring to watch for most of it. They were 12-8 at some point, but especially through that second half of the month. And one of the key reasons was Alejandro Kirk's best game. He had 4 balls, including 2 outs, that were hit over 100 miles per hour off the bat. Of course, his single to win the game. He had his home run, and if he can turn a corner, you have Dalton Varsho on the lineup now stretching it out. He's going to continue to help the team turn the corner. The team looks a lot deeper, like I mentioned yesterday, than it did just 24 hours ago or 48 hours ago before Dalton Varsho. And obviously, you get some power then from Bichette, hopefully, finally, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Anthony Santander, all these different guys. You'll have a real good chance to come out and start winning some more ball games, especially with how elite the bullpen has been. But one of the bigger problems, again, has been Jays versus right-handed pitchers. And they had, coming into yesterday's game, they had a 78 WRC+, probably went up a lot with 3 home runs. But regardless of that, it is a big drop-off from last year. And this is one of the big issues. It's not really being talked about a ton. Obviously, the power and all those things are being talked about, the lack of offense. But I'm talking about this specific stat. It is a significant drop-off, almost 30 points. It is 28 points lower than last season. And that was not expected at all. You're hoping to have positive increase as opposed to a pretty hefty regression here for the Toronto Blue Jays. And I think a lot of that is just going to come down to players finding their footing, new teams, all these different things. And hopefully Alejandro Kirk's going to help with that. You're going to have Dalton Varsho help with that. And you look at the batting stats leaders for the Jays. George Springer is number 2. Tyler Heineman is leading the team in WAR, and he's only played 10 games, which is a ridiculous stat. He's probably going to continue to get in more. Then you have George Springer and Vladdy, Alejandro Kirk, Miles Straw, but you don't see Bo Bichette. You don't see some of the other guys there. And Santander, that's going to come. Santander's never a big WAR guy. He's obviously mainly power, doesn't have a lot of great peripherals. But at the end of the day, you have 2 peripherals in the sense of, good fielding, good average, good on-base percentage, all those different things. But then you look at the pitching stats leader. Jeff Hoffman is number 2 in WAR. Chris Bass is leading the team in WAR. The bullpen is fantastic in the back end. And if the offense can kind of come to life here, you're going to have a good chance to make this, AL East run happen. Because they're only 3.5 games. They're tied with the Rays after all this crazy month. They're only 3.5 games back of the lead. But let me know down below what your thoughts are. Hopefully, the Jays can take care of business tonight. See you guys later.